You're listening to Today at Museum of the Bible with Chief Curatorial Officer Dr. Jeff Kloa. These exclusive conversations with authors, scholars, and leaders visiting the museum focus on how they are currently engaging with the Bible in their lives and work.
Welcome back to a special bonus episode. We're here with Dr. Stephen Fine of Yeshiva University, and he is going to tell us more about another area of expertise of his.
Stephen's done an awful lot of work on the Arch of Titus, which I actually had the privilege of seeing for the first time in Rome about a month ago. It's there, it's huge, right in a very prominent place in the Forum. But Stephen's work has been to identify and understand one particular section of the Arch, which is the carrying off of the spoils of the temple in Jerusalem after its destruction in 70 A.D. So, Stephen Fine is the director of the Center for Israel Studies at Yeshiva University and professor of the study of ancient Judaism and its history. And how did you even get into this topic? Well, let's start with this, Stephen. The temple was destroyed in 70 A.D. by the Romans.
Yes.
Okay. Why? Maybe let's just start with that.
Oh, that's a really good question.
You got 3 minutes.
All right. If you were Jewish, why is because those Judeans living in the pressure cooker of living in the Roman Empire developed different ways of dealing with Rome.
Mm-hmm.
There were those who were accommodating. There were those who were kind of accommodating. Mm-hmm. And there were those who would have nothing to do with it.
Right.
There were those who spoke Greek, those who only spoke Aramaic, who didn't have the perception, I think, of how big Rome was and what it could do.
Right. Yeah, you have a global dominant empire, and it's affecting all aspects of culture and life. And do you want to play along or not?
Mm-hmm.
And most peoples had the same problem. The Gauls had this.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between Jews and everyone else on this one is that people wrote about it, and that what they wrote exists. And so we don't know what the Gauls said about the Gauls, only what Julius Caesar said about them.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know what happened to the Phoenicians in North Africa, but they couldn't have liked it.
Yeah.
But with Jews, we have a vast literature that's preserved either by Jews themselves in Talmudic literature or by Christians in Josephus and New Testament and all sorts of places. And we know a lot. Why? Because the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem served the Emperor Vespasian and his family like a glove. Vespasian took over at the end of what's called the Year of the Four Emperors, 69 CE. And in the Year of the Four Emperors, you can hear, we went from Nero and then two more, and then Vespasian took over, and Rome was a mess. They'd had an emperor since... Julius Caesar, or Augustus, right? And it was the same family. And all of a sudden, that was wiped out by its own decline.
Right.
And the empire was falling apart. Vespasian came in and said, "Oh, I'm a nice guy. I come from mule herders.
Yeah.
I'm a country guy.
He's a populist.
I'm a populist, and you should like me." And so he did some amazing things. He tore down the Emperor Nero's pleasure garden and put up a theater that was as big as anyone had ever seen before, now called the Colosseum, the Flavian Amphitheater. And so the Jewish war became the place where the Flavians could say, "Look what we've done. We destroyed barbarians and reestablished the peace of the empire." And so, being a newbie, they did what new empires do. They went around, as I said, building everywhere.
Yeah.
And building, and building, and building, and building. And one of the things they built was this arch on the Sacred Way in Rome called the Arch of Titus, showing the parade that led and brought the spoils of Jerusalem into Rome. Now, to be granted a triumphal parade in the Roman Empire was a big deal,
yeah.
right?
It's like getting your own YouTube channel or
that's
something,
it.
right?
And and Josephus describes, the Jewish historian describes in great detail what was brought in. There were stages set up so that people could continue fighting battles on them. It was an amazing, amazing thing. And Josephus tells the story as if he were some television reporter. Just the facts. He doesn't exude how much he loves this event. He just sort of describes it because he's caught in between the Jewish community and his roots and his future, and this emperor that kept him alive and turned him into a propagandist.
And is paying him.
Yeah. And so Josephus tells this story, and happily we have this arch in the middle. Now, this arch was a mess until the 19th century when it was rebuilt as an imperial model by and became an imperial focal point both for the church and for Napoleon and for everybody else. That's why there are arches of Titus all over the world. There's one in Valley Forge. There's one in Washington Square Park. Right. Arch of Titus is one here in Washington Heights. They're all over the world because it's such a nice, clean architectural form. And it always serves the same purpose, something to pass through as a triumph. Now, within this arch, there was placed a series of bas-reliefs that are very, very famous. One showed, as you mentioned before, the spoils of Jerusalem being carried into the city of Rome. The other showed Titus on his chariot with victory over his shoulder in this parade. Now,
he's
here's what
defeating
happened.
Africans. I mean, a whole gamut, right?
Oh, it's an amazing parade.
Peace all over the empire.
He did really well. So I'll tell you what happened. I've been fascinated by this thing about as long as I've been fascinated by anything. I wrote an advanced placement art history paper about this thing.
Wow.
So I have known it for a long time.
You've milked this for a while, right?
No, I've just been staring at it for a while.
Yeah.
And so that's why they like to call me the Menorah Man, right? Some of my students, right?
Yeah.
One of them wanted to make me a T-shirt, right? Menorah Man. And so I was invited. I was in Istanbul, and I saw an exhibit there at the National Museum, at the Archaeology Museum, that showed a sarcophagus, which they said was the tomb of Alexander the Great, with paint on it. And a reconstruction of it. And I thought to myself, oh, that's cool. And then I was at the Getty Museum where there was a full exhibition about this.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I started finding sources and thinking about color and imagining what color was like. And then my friend Peter Schertz from the Virginia Museum calls me up and said, we're looking for color on the back of a statue of Caligula. You want to join the group?
Amazing.
So we're sitting and having breakfast, this group of archaeologists, at a moment where checking for color on Roman statues was still really cool, and no one knew what a scanner was called.
At the Virginia MFA.
At the museum.
Cool. Yeah.
Yes, at the hotel nearby.
Okay.
And we're having this conversation, and I said, do you think we could do the Arch of Titus? And it just so happened that enough very powerful Italians were there.
Perfect.
That they were curious if the paint would survive. So off we were to the Arch of Titus with the team that does the scanning, the Peening family from Munich. And we scanned part of this panel of the Arch of Titus and also made a 3D scan of the entire panel, which is the basis of the exhibition that we did, and then reproduced color on it. Now, all we found was the yellow on the menorah. Now, we didn't have a lot of time to look for anything else. We had a one-time shot. Right? And so, believe it or not, a few bits of yellow on the menorah, which are nothing more than, bits of lint, really, on this microphone.
Wow.
Made international press.
Right.
Yellow gold of the menorah discovered on the Arch of Titus. Right.
Yes.
So we made our way into all of these places, and then I realized we weren't going to get back there. It took some time, but it was clear to me that for whatever reasons, we weren't going to get back to Rome. I said, okay, what can we do with what we got? So I sat with Donald Sanders and with my friend Peter from Virginia, and we started a project. Donald has this business that does 3D imaging of archaeological artifacts.
And colorized.
He hadn't done colorization
Yes,
yet.
okay.
So I'll tell you what happened. We started out, it was easy to colorize the menorah. We had the color, that was simple. You just add some color. Right? But then we decided we could fix this. So we fixed the menorah. After we fixed the menorah, we said, we could fix the table over there.
Yeah.
So we fixed the table. Then we realized that we only had one head on any of these statues. And once you look at it, the thing's a mess. Our eyes clean it up and make it more reasonable. So remember, we had this 3D scan. We took one head and put it on all the other heads. So everybody had a head. Then we realized that this image is the same as this image, except this guy's fatter than that guy. And realized we began to know our images. And so we reproduced and fixed all the feet. Right?
Yeah.
And by the time we knew it, we'd done the whole silly thing.
You did an entire digital restoration.
We did it, and we didn't plan to. It just sort of like, maybe this will work. And, no, this is a little much. Don't you think this is a little much? Then we started with the color.
Yeah.
And the question was, okay, we got the menorah, we got this other stuff. What color do we make the skin? Do we make it dark brown? Do we make it light brown? Do we make it look like Northern Europeans? Do we make it look like Mediterranean people? Obviously, we chose Mediterranean people. Then, what color are the tunics? So we took Roman tunics. Then what kind of background could this be? Well, look at the Roman paintings. They use blue backgrounds. Okay, we'll use a blue background. And so little by little, the same way we did the fixing of the body parts,
Right.
the whole thing ended up in color. Then we thought, oh my God, this is cool. Because it hadn't been done with that level of precision. So we did an exhibition at Yeshiva University Museum where we created this thing. But we weren't going to paint it because then people would think we actually believed what we'd done.
Right.
And we weren't going to put all of the shading because we don't know what the shading was. So we decided, and Donald came up with this, that we would project the reconstruction and then the color straight onto a model of full size. And that would create all the shadows because the light would create the shadows and we wouldn't. And they would be much more authentic to the original object than us deciding, this color, this cheek should be red.
Right.
And so that's what we did. But what it allowed for was literally walking up to this panel and seeing it without funny glasses in ways that hadn't been seen before.
Yeah.
Just utterly cool.
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning, which became a whole project on the Arch. And so as is my wont, we did this exhibition, which became
and a book, and a movie, and a...
No, we didn't do the movie. That's the thing I missed. I should have done the movie.
You could go back and do it.
No, you can't because we can't go back to Rome. And so...
it's not that hard.
No, but we can't go back and check again.
Because it's
Because
so
other people,
yeah.
No, because other people are doing it. Once we did it, other people are doing it.
So did the Met do this after you? Because I think
I'll tell you
what
happened with the Met.
Okay.
The Met has a wonderful exhibition, which is sort of next generation color right now. The Germans who originally did the coloration that I'd seen in Istanbul, that I'd seen in Los Angeles, at first everybody poo-pooed them. Because after all this stuff's really white.
We're
right?
so used to seeing it.
We're so used to white. And somebody even attacked us in one of the magazines. How can you put color on the arches? You're taking away our beautiful white statues.
Right.
Which says more about us than anything having to do with them. Because their stuff looked like, piñatas.
Yeah.
And it was all painted like some saint from Mexico.
Right.
It was not all
or
white
like Pompeii was so colorful and so well preserved.
Of course. Or India, once again, right? And so, and it wasn't always beautiful, and sometimes it was messy, and sometimes it was scratched, and this fading, and all of that. But these guys reconstructed the color reasonably, but they missed one thing, and that is that next stage that no one ever saw it the day it was painted. Right? I come from San Diego. Where I come from, if you paint your garage door red by the summer's end, it's going to be pink.
Yeah.
Right? Because it fades.
Right.
And so all of the all of the changes that would take place for the living object weren't in the exhibition. And also, they weren't painterly about how they reconstructed the statues. What happened now, this is third generation, they were the first, we were the second, this is third. What they've done with the statues at the Met was, some of them are the originals. In fact, the one I saw in Istanbul is there too. But
The Caligula one.
no, the one of
Oh, that's right.
of,
Alexander's
Yes,
sarcophagus. But they've taken some sculpture, some of it Met sculpture, and they've added the shading. And they've gone that next step. And after the more than a decade of people saying there's color, that's color, and every 3 weeks somebody goes on and does a podcast about, look, there's color.
Yeah.
Like they've discovered America.
Right.
Everything was colored. New York City, you'd walk around and everyone's in white and black and blue. Right? And we have great cars.
Yes.
And that's considered serious. If you walk in, if I were to walk in a chartreuse shirt, they wouldn't take me as seriously. Right? And so modernism has this stuff about black and white and seriousness that Romans didn't have. And so this, like Samaritans, is a place to sort of tilt a little bit and say, oh, that's different.
Yeah.
Let's think about ourselves in different ways.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately what scholarship is supposed to be, I hope.
Yeah.
An opportunity to think about our past through our present and figure out our future.
Yeah.
And that's what scholarship is. That's what exhibition is about, right? That's what film is about when it's done by people who know what they're talking about, right? When academics do this stuff, we're not doing it to create a book in the library, I hope.
Right.
We're doing it to create a culture that we all can live in together. And the amazing thing for me is, of course, that my Titus was on display at the Museum of the Bible in an exhibition not so long ago in beautiful color. And
There's another story about that we don't have time to get into here.
but you know what? It came out beautifully.
Yep.
And it's because of that event that you and I got together and met, and that's why our Samaritan things happened. And so it's all for good.
Yep.
And people who came to the museum and saw that exhibition, which was organized by the Hebrew University of first century archaeology, looked up and said, oh, that's what it looked like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what it's about.
It's literally eye-opening and very beautiful, even if it's garish.
And you can
to
see
some
Stephen's
eyes.
work on Wikipedia.
Oh, it's on
It's there.
Wikipedia. You can also see the video. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It's really cool.
Very cool.
So
Yes.
we can't let you go, Stephen. We have to ask you some questions. Unprepared, unprompted.
We're
I can
asking
answer.
these of all of our guests now. So just the first thing that comes to your mind, even if the answer is pass.
He's not going to pass.
What Bible-related book should everyone read?
Oh, our Samaritan book. That's obvious.
There we go.
In character the whole time. All right.
Oh, but let me just say one more thing.
Yes.
What Bible-related book should everyone read? The Bible.
Yeah.
With a good commentary.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Give us a good commentary.
Yeah.
Look, it depends on who you are and what you're interested in, right? There are
Well,
commentators
What's yours?
galore. Me, I go to the medieval and the ancient ones. That's my
okay.
first
All
stop.
right. Okay.
So if you want to know what Jews have thought about the Torah, go to the Jewish Publication Society edition. There's lots of good Jewish commentaries out there, even in English. If you want to get to the source, I always go to the source.
Yep.
Find a commentary by a fellow named Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, in English, and see how Jews have really lived with this text and without anything between you and the text and the commentator.
Yeah.
So that's number one.
All right. What biblical story or passage do you wish was more familiar to people?
Oh, that's a hard one.
It's kind of a two-step question in a way.
Love your neighbor as yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it, but doesn't really know it, perhaps.
And sometimes we take neighbor and put an asterisk next to it. And in our world, that would be a good one to pay attention to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's good.
All right. One significant impact of the Bible that you'd like people to know. So where
Look, the Bible is
people-
everywhere. It is literally everywhere.
Yeah.
The only question then is, in paying attention to what everywhere is, people walk through the world and don't notice, let me use our own thing, the Good Samaritan hospitals.
Right.
And,
right.
and who's that Good Samaritan? People walk through the world and see, gray spots on Catholics' heads around Ash Wednesday,
Yes.
and just walk right by and don't ask the
Yeah.
question, what is that?
Yeah.
And my experience is that if you walk up to someone and say, what is that?
Right.
Right?
You might learn something.
You know, I was once in a cab, and the Sikh guy was there. He got off Bible for just a half a second.
Yeah, yeah.
And he had a big black turban. And I'd never seen a Sikh with a black turban. So I said, why do you have a black turban? We started talking. I talked to all these people, right? It's fun. And he said, I'll tell you the truth. My father had an orange turban. At home, I have an orange turban or a white turban too. I said, so why do you have a black one? He said, because in America, they didn't take us seriously with an orange turban. Because the priest and the rabbis all wearing black. So he's wearing a black turban, right? Is that not a window into American religion and into us?
Yes.
So that's
fascinating. Yeah.
All right. Might be an easy one. Your preferred Bible translation.
I don't prefer a Bible translation.
Because you're reading in Hebrew.
Because you read it in Hebrew.
Okay.
Now, look, there is no good Bible translation. The person who translates is a liar, and the person who doesn't is a thief.
Yeah.
Right? Or as the Hebrew poet Bialik said, the person who reads a translation is like the person who kisses his beloved through a veil. And that's so true. So everyone should learn Hebrew. But and let me just add, well, yes, when you get for New Testament, it's less important because it didn't assume language in the same way.
Yeah, right.
But Greek, because I did both, and then you can do the Septuagint, and that's good too.
That's good too. Yeah.
Now, I say that as a challenge, right? If someone doesn't know an aleph, he should learn an aleph, and if she doesn't know a bet, she should learn a bet. If she doesn't know an alpha, she should learn an alpha, and if she doesn't know a beta, she should learn a beta, right? One line at a time, one word at a time. Now, if you ask me what I use, I generally use for my writing the Revised Standard Version.
Oh, okay.
Why is that? Because it covers everything. I always doctor it to whatever I want it to be. But I don't have to keep saying I'm using this translation for this and that translation for that.
So the original RSV from the
original, you know why?
Yeah.
Because it is not gender neutral.
Yeah. Right.
And I deal with dead people. I'm not dealing with contemporary communities. And for writing history, the Bible is not a gender neutral document the way New RSV is or the way some of the Jewish translations are. Right? So I would go back to King James, but it's too far. Right? So RSV serves me well as an academic. As a reader, and if I was when I'm reading English of New Testament, I'll go to the New RSV probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This is fascinating. If you guys want to learn more, please visit museumofthebible.org. You can check out the Samaritans exhibition that was co-created with Dr. Stephen Fine of Yeshiva University.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for hosting us.
Thank you for listening to Today at Museum of the Bible. Join us again to hear how authors, scholars, and leaders are engaging with the Bible every day. Only on Today at Museum of the Bible.